Hello, I'm Mr. Michael of the Classical Liberal Arts Academy, and in this video we're going to get started with our study of Petty School reading. The Petty School program is intended for preschool children ages 2 and 3 up to 7 or 8, and sometimes older children also find these lessons helpful. But this course, Petty School Reading, is intended to help young students learn to read. The way that we teach reading in the Classical Liberal Arts Academy actually starts with the study of Classical Latin. The reason why we do that is because the Latin language is very simple. Classical Latin, there are 23 letters, and each letter represents one sound. So phonics are very easy to learn in Classical Latin. In English, things can get very difficult. In English, one letter may be used to represent 5 different sounds. Some letters are silent in English. And it's very difficult for children to learn how to read English. Some children have a bad experience with English reading lessons, and they think that there's something wrong with them. They think that they're not good at reading. Sometimes parents think that there's a problem with their children because they struggle to read, when the reality is that English is a difficult language to read. And so we take time at the beginning of studies to introduce young children to Classical Latin phonics as a way to teach them to read. The letters in Latin look the same as letters in English, so it's helpful also for English reading. But it takes some of the confusion and stress out of the phonics lessons for little children. Everything we learn in Petty School reading will also be helpful in English reading. And in fact, we're going to start with Classical Latin letters and sounds, and then we're going to learn medieval Latin sounds and add a bit to our reading, and then we're going to learn Old English and Modern English. So by the time we're done in Petty School reading, we're going to be reading Modern English. But we'll take it one step at a time and make sure that we can lead little ones up to English reading without teaching them any fake rules that try to oversimplify things that are complicated. But we'll teach them true rules of phonics, but we'll start with a simple language like Classical Latin. Now, in the first lesson of Petty School reading, what we do is we learn a little bit about language itself. And what I like to do is introduce young children to a couple important ideas. First of all, we need to learn about objects, ideas, and words. Objects, ideas, and words. When we look out at the world or look around us, we see thousands and thousands of objects. We see objects all throughout the world. In fact, they're almost infinite. We could never stop studying all the objects that God has created around us. There are objects outside of our minds. We can see these things, hear these things, smell these things, touch these things, taste these things, all of these objects which are outside of us. So, for example, there may be a flower out in the field, and we look at that flower, and that flower is an object. But when we look at that flower, what our mind does, our mind forms an image of that flower. And so we have an image in our mind of the objects that we see. The flower as an object is outside our mind. We can see the flower, we can smell the flower, we can touch the flower. But our mind creates an image of that flower, of that object, and this is called an idea. An idea is an image in our mind of anything that we observe in the world. So there are objects outside of our minds. There are ideas in our minds, images of those things which we see and smell and taste and touch and hear in the world. Now, when another person comes along, we may have an idea in our mind, and we may wish to share that idea with someone else. And to share an idea with someone else, we use words. And so I may say to my friend a word. I may say flower. And this word flower is a symbol of the idea that I have of a flower. And this idea of a flower is a symbol of the object that I saw, the flower that exists in the world. So there are objects in the world. Our minds create ideas or images of those objects. And when we speak to others, we speak with spoken words, and we share those ideas with words. So we have objects, ideas, and words. Make sure you understand these three things: objects, ideas, and words. Objects, ideas, and words. Objects are outside of us. Ideas are images in our mind, and words are spoken to share those images, those ideas with others. So we have objects, ideas, and words. Now, these words are called language. We use language to share ideas. We use language to share ideas. And there are two different kinds of language that we use to share ideas. The first kind of language that we use is called spoken language. And the second kind of language that we use is called written. So there are two kinds of language that we use to share ideas. The first kind of language is called spoken language. I'm using spoken language right now. You use spoken language every day. But you may not know how to use the other kind of language. The second kind of language is written language. And here on the board, you can see that I'm using written language. I'm using spoken language as I speak on this video, and I'm using written language as I write on this board. I'm using spoken language and written language to share my ideas. I'm using spoken language and written language to share my ideas. This is what we call language. And these are the two kinds of language: spoken language and written language. Now, when we use spoken language, we use spoken words. And when we use written language, we use written words. But in order to learn how to use written language, we have to learn two important things. First, we have to learn reading. We have to learn how to read written language. These written words are symbols of ideas. We have to learn how to read these written words. And secondly, we have to learn we have to learn writing. We have to learn how to write written words. So we have to learn reading and writing. And in Petty School, we're going to learn reading and writing so that you can learn to use written language. Okay, so there are objects in the world. We love to look at all these objects. We love to listen to these objects. We love to listen to birds singing. We love to look out and see a beautiful blue sky and to see flowers and all kinds of animals. We like to taste delicious foods that God has created for us. We like to hear music. We like to smell beautiful smells like flowers and perfumes and food cooking and things like that. We use our senses to study all of these objects in the world. And then our mind forms ideas of those objects, these images in our mind that we can think about. We can close our eyes and think about things that we have seen in the world. We can think about objects because our mind creates images of them, and we call those images ideas. But then we like to share our ideas with others. We like to talk to others about our ideas. We like to write notes to others. We like to read books about other people's ideas. And this requires us to learn language, to learn how to use language. We need to learn how to use spoken words, which we learn by listening and speaking every day. And we also need to learn how to use written words. We need to learn reading and writing. And in this course, we're going to learn the art of reading. We're going to learn how to read. We're going to learn how letters work. We're going to learn about the sounds of letters, and we're going to learn to read letters and syllables and words. So this is our first lesson in Petty School reading, and all we've done is talk about objects in the world, how our mind creates ideas about those objects, and how we share those ideas with language. In our next lesson, we're going to get started with our first lesson in reading. God bless.